My daughter gave up her baby, so we raised him as our own. Now, 25 years later, she's back, and she wants money. When my daughter Mildred turned 18, she handed me a gift that would change our lives forever: a positive pregnancy test. I barely had time to react before she made an announcement. "I'm not ending this pregnancy, so you two better step up." By "you two," she meant me and her father, and by "step up," she meant raise the child for her. Now my husband and I always wanted more children. We adore babies. So, despite the shock, we agreed. Mildred wasted no time. She had paperwork in hand and insisted on giving up her parental rights entirely. Her reason? She didn't want to be on the hook if we ever needed financial help. As if she had anything to give. We named him Philip, and from the very beginning he was a dream. Kind, polite, always offering to help around the house, even though my husband, an accountant, didn't have much for a 10-year-old to do. It was still sweet, but as Philip grew older, he began asking about his birth mom. Every year on Mother's Day, he'd write 2 cards, one for me and one labeled "to Mommy" that he kept hidden in a box under his bed. He reached out to Mildred more than a dozen times, hoping to meet. But each time she shut him down. By the 13th rejection, he finally stopped trying. My husband and I did everything to make him feel loved. We gave up our savings so he could go to college without worrying about work. We took him on trips, made memories, and watched him grow into someone truly incredible. By 22, it seemed like he'd moved on from any need for a relationship with Mildred. She never asked about him, not once. She blocked us on every app, every platform. The only thing we knew was that she'd moved across the country and gotten remarried. Honestly, we were fine with that. Meanwhile, Philip left school to launch a car detailing business with his friends. He had a talent for marketing, and the company took off fast. Out of gratitude, he insisted on giving us a portion of the profits. We told him he didn't have to, but he said it was the least he could do for the parents who never let him down. Then came Amber, the love of his life. Sweet, warm, thoughtful. They were happy. Life felt peaceful. Until Thanksgiving. We were all gathered around the table when Philip got a call. I assumed it was a client. He even put it on speaker, but when I heard the voice on the other end, my heart sank. It was Mildred. She asked how he was. He kept it short, his tone cool. When she asked to meet, he said he'd think about it and hung up. Afterwards, I offered to go with him if he decided to meet her. He looked relieved and said, "That would actually be great." I had a bad feeling. We met her at the fanciest restaurant in town. She didn't even hug him, didn't ask about his life. Her first words? "What's the budget for tonight?" My son just shrugged. She ordered lobster ravioli and wine like we were on her payroll. Then she noticed his phone's lock screen, a picture of Amber. She commented, "Wow, she's beautiful. Reminds me of me and my ex. We were adorable once, before I cheated." The table went silent. Then came the real reason she wanted to meet. "I'm between jobs right now, and I really need help. I'll need about $14,000 for a new place. I'll send my bank details and make sure the money's there before the weekend." I expected my son to explode, but he didn't. He just sat there quietly waiting for his food. Me? I was ready to speak my mind. But just as I opened my mouth, I felt my husband gently squeeze my hand under the table. A quiet reminder. We'd already given her everything once, and we weren't about to do it again. My daughter gave up her son. We raised him. 25 years later, she came back, but this time with a price tag. Under the table, I felt a pinch. It was my son's way of telling me to stay calm, so I did. But I had no idea that sweet, polite Philip had a plan, and Mildred was finally about to face the consequences of her choices. Later that night, I was pacing the kitchen, still boiling over what had happened at the restaurant. Larry tried to calm me with a cup of tea, but I was too angry. Meanwhile, Philip was casually scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. "I don't get how you can stay so calm," I snapped. "She abandoned you. Ignored you for decades, and now she just drops in and demands money?" Philip gave me one of those quiet, knowing smiles. "Mom, trust me, I've got it handled." I stared at him. What does that even mean? He turned his phone toward me. He was in the middle of a bank transfer, but the amount? $14. "Wait, 14? I asked, thinking maybe I misread it. "Yep," he said. "She asked for money. Never said how much." $14 should cover a decent lunch." Larry burst into laughter, and I couldn't hold back a smile either. The tension I'd been carrying finally started to melt. My son, He wasn't a pushover after all. You're something else, Larry said, clapping him on the back. The next morning, I was making breakfast when Philip's phone, left charging on the counter, started blowing up with messages. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen kept lighting up. Where's the rest of it? This isn't funny. I need that money now. I woke Philip up and showed him the messages. He just laughed, typed something quickly, and headed for the shower. I glanced at what he wrote. Sorry, budget's tight this month. Hope the $14 helps. By noon, the calls started. Philip ignored every single one. By evening, there were 17 missed calls, all from Mildred. He played her voicemails out loud so we could hear. Each one got angrier, more desperate. You think this is a joke? I'll show you what happens when you disrespect me. That last one made me pause. It sounded like more than just frustration. It felt like a threat. I suggested calling the police. But Philip just shook his head. She talks big. She always has. I wasn't so sure. 3 days passed with silence. I hoped it was over. Philip was back at work. Everything seemed normal. Until I got a call. It was Philip. Panicked. Mom, she's here. She's at the shop. She's making a scene. I grabbed my keys and Larry and we rushed over. Even before we stepped inside, we could hear her yelling. Mildred was in the middle of the reception area, shouting like it was a personal stage. You owe me! I gave birth to you! The least you could do is help your mother out! Customers were frozen, wide-eyed. Philip stood firm, hands slightly raised, speaking calmly. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting my business. Ma'am, I'm your mother. You ungrateful little... I stepped forward, ready to jump in, but Larry put a hand on my arm. Let him handle it. And handle it, he did. Philip approached her, calm and composed. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. Go ahead, she snapped. I'll tell them you promised me money and backed out. That's when I noticed Ralph, Philip's assistant, quietly dialing behind the counter. Good thinking. Philip gently touched her arm and guided her toward the door. I never promised you $14,000. I said I'd help. I sent what I could. Please leave, before this gets worse. But it did get worse. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and shoved it in his face. I've been recording this whole thing, and I've got your text. Everyone's going to know what kind of son turns his back on his mother. We later found out she only started recording halfway through, after the yelling and chaos. But the damage was done. She stormed out, nearly knocking over a display of air fresheners on her way. Philip spent the next hour apologizing to customers, offering discounts, trying to smooth things over. Some appointments got canceled on the spot. He looked worried, even though he tried to hide it. That night, while we were sitting around the kitchen table trying to process everything, Philip's phone dinged. A message from Amber. It was a link. Mildred had posted the video online, edited to make Philip look heartless, like he'd coldly rejected a helpless mother. The caption told a story of betrayal, struggle, and her ungrateful son who ran a thriving business but couldn't be bothered to help her stay off the streets. The comments were brutal. People were calling Philip every name in the book, but they didn't know the real story. Not yet. The comments under Mildred's video were harsh. People said they'd never use Philip's business again. A few even threatened to leave bad reviews. This is defamation, Larry said, visibly angry. We could take legal action. But Philip just shook his head. That'll only drag it out. I've got a better plan. The next day, he posted a video of his own. Sitting in his office, looking straight into the camera, he calmly laid out the truth. How his biological mother gave him up at birth, how she ignored his attempts to reconnect, and how, after 25 years of silence, she suddenly showed up asking for $14,000 without even asking how he was doing. He backed it all up with screenshots, texts that showed her skipping any real conversation and jumping straight into a money request. I hold no resentment, he said at the end. I wish her peace, but I won't be pressured or misrepresented, and I won't let false narratives damage the business I've built through dedication and integrity. The response, immediate and powerful, support came flooding in. Customers shared their positive experiences. New clients reached out. The tide turned fast, but Mildred wasn't done. A week later, Philip got a call from the local police. Someone, we all knew who, had filed a report accusing him of theft. She claimed he'd promised her financial help and then backed out, trying to frame it as fraud. The officer on the phone sounded skeptical but explained that they had to follow protocol. Philip was asked to come in and give a statement. I went with him. Watching him handle it made me feel proud in a way I can't describe. Calmly, he explained the whole situation, showed the messages, and even pulled up the $14 transfer. The officer actually chuckled. So, you did send money, just not what she expected? Yes, sir, Philip said. She asked for help. I gave what I felt comfortable giving. I never specified a number. It was over quickly. The officer even admitted off the record that this kind of thing wasn't really a police matter, more of a private family issue. I thought we were done. We weren't. A few days later, Mildred showed up at our house. Philip was at work. It was just Larry and me. I barely recognized her on the porch. She looked rough. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, eyes glassy from crying. Or something else. Can I come in? She asked softly. Please, Mom. I just want to talk. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Larry came down when he heard the voices. The second he saw her sitting at the kitchen table, his expression hardened. What now? He asked. And just like that, the tears started. Loud, dramatic sobs that filled the room. I've messed everything up, she wailed. I just needed help and didn't know how to ask. I handed her a tissue but kept my emotional distance. I'd seen this act before. Why did you file a police report against Philip? I asked quietly. She sniffled. I was desperate. I'm serious. I have nowhere to go. My ex cut me off completely. So your plan was to get your son in legal trouble? Larry asked, his voice like ice. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted someone to force him to help me. Then she turned to Larry, and suddenly her tone shifted. Dad, you've always understood me better than Mom. I saw it. Something flickered in Larry's expression. Pity? Guilt? Doubt? She leaned in. He's doing so well. What's $14,000 to him? It's nothing to him, but it would save me. Mildred, I said, firm now. Philip doesn't owe you anything. You gave up your rights. You ignored him when he reached out. You can't just reappear and demand help. But he's my son, she cried. No, I stood. He's our son. We raised him. We were there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. Where were you? She turned to Larry again. Please, Dad, just talk to him. He'll listen to you. And to my shock, Larry hesitated. Maybe we could help her a little, he said. Not the full amount, just enough to get her through. My heart dropped. Larry, no, she's manipulating you. She's still our daughter, Margaret, he said, using my full name, which he only did when we disagreed about something big. And what does that teach Philip? Mildred saw her opening and jumped on it. He doesn't need to know. It could just be between us. A family helping family. I was about to argue when the front door opened. Philip was home. He froze in the doorway, staring at Mildred sitting at our kitchen table like she belonged there. Philip's face didn't show a flicker of emotion. That same unreadable calm he wore at the restaurant returned. What's going on here? He asked softly. Your mother came to apologize. Larry jumped in quickly. Mildred nodded, eyes wide and hands clasped. Yes, I feel horrible about everything. I was hoping we could start over. Philip turned to me. He read my expression instantly, the skepticism I couldn't hide. Is that really why you're here? He asked her. Of course, she said, all innocence. Not because you thought you'd try your luck with my parents since I said no? Her entire demeanor snapped like a switch. The tears vanished and her voice dropped, cold and bitter. Well, what did you expect? You've got everything while I'm scraping by. Somebody in this family has to step up. Philip didn't raise his voice. He just looked at her and said, You should go. Not until I get what I came for, she snapped. And what exactly is that? He asked, his tone calm, too calm. She turned to Larry, suddenly sweet again. Dad, you were just about to help me, weren't you? Larry shifted in his seat. I said we might help, a little. Philip's face fell. I saw it happen in real time. The trust, the foundation he'd built with Larry, fracture. It hurt just to watch. Dad, she's manipulating you, Philip said quietly. Just like she tried to manipulate me. Larry didn't respond. I put a hand on his arm. Listen to him, Larry. He's right. Mildred stood abruptly, her chair scraping back across the floor. Fine. Be that way. I'll figure it out myself. Like I always have. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence she left behind felt heavier than the confrontation itself. Philip wouldn't look at Larry. Larry stared at the floor, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, son. I don't know what I was thinking. She's always had a hold on you, Philip said, not angry, just tired. He walked out, and a few minutes later we heard his car start. He didn't come home that night. The days that followed were tense. Philip stayed focused on work, trying to contain the fallout from Mildred's video. Even though his response had helped, a few fake negative reviews still popped up online, enough to hurt. Larry couldn't stop blaming himself. I tried to reassure him, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed too, after everything he should have seen through her. Then, about a week later, Philip came by for dinner. He was polite but distant, glancing at his phone every few minutes. Everything okay? I asked while we were clearing dishes. Yeah, he said, distracted. Just waiting for a call. It came as we were serving dessert. He stepped into the living room to take it. When he returned, his expression had changed. That quiet, calculating smile was back. That was Amber, he said, sitting down. Everything's set for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night? Larry asked. I've invited Mildred to dinner, Philip said. I nearly dropped my spoon. You what? I asked, stunned. He nodded. I think it's time to end this the right way. I want closure. I want to face it head on. And I'd like you both to be there. Philip, are you sure? I said, my voice low. Please, trust me on this, he replied. I know what I'm doing. There was something in his eyes. Not anger, not resentment, but clarity. So we agreed. The restaurant he chose was upscale, very upscale. The kind of place where dinner for 4 could hit $500 without even trying. When we arrived, Mildred was already there. And to my surprise, she looked polished. Hair done, makeup perfect, new dress, a fresh manicure. The whole I'm barely surviving act seemed to have been left at home. Philip greeted her with a hug. She blinked, surprised, but quickly leaned into the role of the happy mother seeing her son again. I'm so glad you called, she said, all smiles. I've been feeling just awful about the last time. Let's just enjoy dinner, Philip said smoothly. The evening started out calm. Philip asked her questions, and she basked in the attention, talking nonstop about her life. I noticed he kept topping off her wine glass. By the time entrees arrived, she was on her 4th. So, Philip said casually, tell me more about this apartment. Sounds like a great place. Oh, it's amazing, she gushed. Ocean view, new appliances, totally perfect. But the deposit's murder. No savings from your marriage? He asked, voice light. She waved him off. I was never good with money. And my ex? He's being impossible. That must be hard, Philip said gently. So if family doesn't come through, what's your plan? She shrugged, took another sip, and leaned in. I always find a way. Between you and me, I've got a few tricks left. Philip raised an eyebrow. Like what? She laughed, tipsy now, and said, well, that police report was just... And if that didn't work, Mildred continued with a tipsy little smirk, I figured I'd start calling some of your biggest clients. Tell them a few stories. Make them feel bad for your poor, struggling mother. I gasped. Larry's hand tightened around his fork. But Philip? He just nodded, calm as ever. So, the whole story about being homeless was just a setup? She shrugged. Not completely. I do need a place. But maybe it's not as urgent as I made it sound. Then she laughed. You should have seen your dad's face when I cried at your place. I almost had that check signed. Philip tilted his head. So you admit you were playing us? Oh, come on, she said, waving her hand. It's not playing. It's just knowing how to push the right buttons. She winked. You're my son. You should want to help me. Philip's voice stayed steady. Even though you ignored me for years when I reached out as a kid? Her expression shifted again, a flash of defensiveness. That was different. I wasn't ready to be a mom back then. And now you're ready because you need money? He asked quietly. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. This is what families do. They help each other. Philip just looked at her. Even if it means lying and filing reports you know aren't true? She leaned back and smiled coolly. Look, I did what I had to do, and I'd do it again. That's just how I survive. Then Philip pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and looked her right in the eye. Thanks for making that so clear, Mildred. I just wanted to be absolutely sure. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He turned the screen toward her. It was recording. her entire face drained of color. You recorded me? Yep, Philip said calmly. Every word, including the part where you admitted the whole homelessness thing was exaggerated. The false report, and your plan to contact my clients with more stories if this didn't work. You can't do that, she snapped. That's illegal. Actually, Philip replied, sliding the phone back into his pocket. Not in this state. One-party consent, and I was that party. He stood. I think we're done here. She looked around, desperate now, as if hoping someone would stop him. You wouldn't really use that against me, would you? I'm your mother. Philip shook his head. No, Margaret is my mother. Larry is my father. You're the person who gave birth to me and disappeared until you needed something. He pulled a few bills from his wallet and dropped them on the table. Dinner's on me. We're leaving. We followed him out. Mildred called after us, her voice rising now. Philip, wait! I'm sorry, we can work this out. But he didn't turn around. None of us did. In the parking lot, I hugged my son tightly. I'm so proud of you, I whispered. He smiled softly. Thanks, Mom, but it's not over yet. Larry raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Philip glanced at his watch. Amber's uploading the audio right now to my business page, along with a statement explaining everything. The truth's finally out there. Sure enough, by the time we got home, it was live. A post from his company account, with the full recording and a calm, professional summary of the situation. You planned this? I asked, amazed. He nodded. I knew she wouldn't be able to help herself. People like Mildred always want to take credit for how clever they think they are. We drove the rest of the way in silence. I couldn't stop thinking about how maturely he'd handled it. Calm, strategic, never cruel. He didn't stoop to her level. He just let her reveal herself. The next morning, the backlash began. Mildred's video was no longer earning her sympathy. It was earning her judgment. Her comment sections exploded with people calling her out. Friends distanced themselves. The truth had changed everything. Almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. 3 days later, the final chapter began. She showed up again. This time, at Philip's business. I was there helping out in the office. She looked different. No yelling, no theatrics. Just worn down. Philip, she said, voice hoarse. You ruined me. My friends won't talk to me. That recording is everywhere. I can't get a job. I'm really going to lose everything now. Philip didn't flinch. That's not my responsibility, he said quietly. She stepped toward him, face twisting in anger. How can you be so heartless? I gave you life. And you turned your back on me. He looked at her, calm and steady. You made choices, Mildred. And now you're living with them. Then she snapped. She lunged forward, hand raised, as if to strike him. I stood up instinctively, but Philip was faster. He caught her wrist midair. Don't, he said, voice low. Just don't. Whatever fire was in her drained in an instant. Her arm dropped, her shoulders sagged, and tears started falling. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. And for just a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret. And yet, for a moment, I saw it. Just a flicker. A trace of compassion in Philip's eyes. Despite everything, some part of him still cared. Maybe not for the woman Mildred had become, but for the idea of what she could have been. Get help, he said gently. Real help. For whatever's made you treat people this way. And maybe one day, we can try to rebuild something. But not like this. Never like this! He let go of her wrist and stepped back. I'm not giving you money. I'm not letting you manipulate me or my parents ever again. This ends here. Mildred stared at him for a long, empty moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out. When the door shut behind her, Philip exhaled slowly. I walked over, wrapped my arm around his shoulders. You okay? I whispered. He nodded. Yeah, I think I finally am. We didn't hear from Mildred for almost 2 weeks after that. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits, just silence. And for a while, I let myself believe she might have finally understood and moved on. Until one morning, I opened my inbox and froze. A new email from Mildred, sent to me, Larry, and Philip. The subject line, goodbye. My hands trembled as I clicked. It was short. A few vague sentences about not being able to handle the embarrassment anymore. how she had nothing left, how she was ready to end it all. Classic Mildred, always with the drama. But what if this time it wasn't a performance? I called Philip immediately. Did you see the email? I blurted as soon as he picked up. Yeah, he said with a sigh. Don't worry, Mom. How can you be sure? I was already reaching for my keys. Because 10 minutes ago, he said, she posted a selfie from a coffee shop captioned, New Beginnings. I sank into my chair, relief and exhaustion washing over me. So, it was just another tactic. Exactly, Philip said. She's hoping we'll panic. Reach out, offer help, or money, or both. He was right. Again. What do we do? I asked. Nothing, he said firmly. Absolutely nothing. And that's what we did. No replies, no second chances. Philip blocked her on every platform, changed his number. Larry and I did the same. It felt brutal, but necessary, like closing a door that should have been locked a long time ago. Life slowly returned to normal. Philip's business bounced back. In fact, better than before. The way he had handled the whole ordeal, people admired it. New clients reached out, saying they respected his honesty, his calm. Some even said they related, because people love a good redemption story. And Philip had lived one. About a month after the farewell email, I was at the grocery store. My cart bumped someone else's, and I looked up, ready to apologize. And there he was. Richard, Mildred's ex-husband. Margaret? He said, surprised. Wow, it's been a long time. It had. Years, in fact. Hi, Richard, I managed. I wasn't sure what one says when running into their estranged daughter's ex. But thankfully, he spared me the awkwardness. I heard what happened with Mildred and Philip, he said gently. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I said quietly. No, but I should have warned you, he admitted. When she started talking about reaching out to Philip, I knew something was off. She'd just maxed out her credit cards and was desperate for a new source of income. So she really was broke? Oh, definitely, he nodded. But not because of me. The divorce settlement was more than generous. She burns through money like it's nothing. We ended up grabbing coffee after finishing our shopping. And there, in that small corner cafe, he told me more than I ever knew. How Mildred had cheated multiple times. How she drained their joint accounts before walking out. How she'd tried to turn their mutual friends against him with lies. She just doesn't see people as people, he said, stirring his coffee. They're tools, things to use. And in that moment, I saw the full picture. The times I excused missing money from my purse. The lies I chose to believe about where she was going. The way I let her manipulate Larry again and again. I enabled her, I said quietly. For years. Richard reached across the table, gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. We all did, he said. But Philip didn't. I smiled, a small, proud smile. No, I agreed. He didn't. When I got home, I told Larry about the conversation. He just nodded. Richard said Mildred moved to Arizona. New start, new people who don't know her past. Good, Larry murmured. Maybe she'll stay there. But of course, with Mildred, nothing is ever truly over. 3 months later, Philip and Amber got engaged. They decided to keep it small, just a cozy celebration at home, with about 20 close friends and family. I was in the kitchen helping Amber arrange the food when the doorbell rang. I heard Philip answer it. Then silence. The kind of silence that makes your stomach twist. I peeked around the corner, and my heart sank. Mildred stood in the doorway, holding a gift bag and smiling like she belonged there. Surprise! She sang, trying to step past Philip into the house. I heard my baby boy is getting married. Philip stood firmly in the doorway. How did you find out about this? How do you even know where I live? She waved her hand like it was no big deal. Oh, I have my ways. Aren't you going to let me in? I brought champagne. I started to move toward them, but Philip gave me a look. Calm, steady. He had this. Mildred, he said evenly, you weren't invited. Her smile cracked. But I'm your mother. Of course I should be here. No, he said again. You're not invited, and you're not welcome. Her expression darkened. Is this about that little misunderstanding we had? I thought we were past all that. It wasn't a misunderstanding, he said. You tried to extort me, filed a false report, threatened my business. And when that didn't work, you sent an email implying you were in danger. That's not a misunderstanding. That's manipulation. She looked genuinely offended. I was going through a lot. You could show some compassion. By now, other guests had started to notice. Amber appeared behind Philip, her face tense. What's going on? She asked softly. Nothing, Philip replied without turning his head. She was just leaving. Mildred's eyes shifted to Amber, and then I saw it. A flash of something cruel. So you're the one who took my son from me? Amber blinked, startled. Excuse me? He was going to help me. Until you came along, Mildred snapped. You think you're so perfect, don't you? With your pretty face and that's enough. Philip cut her off, his voice firm. You need to leave. Now. Or I'll call the police. She paused, suddenly aware of the people watching from inside. Guests whispering, judging. Her expression shifted. She was losing. Fine, she snapped, shoving the gift bag into Philip's hands. I just wanted to give you this, to show there are no hard feelings. Philip glanced inside, then quickly closed the bag. His face went pale. Get out, he said, voice shaking. And don't ever contact me or my family again. Mildred just smiled, like she'd won something. Enjoy your party, she said sweetly, then turned and walked back to her car. As soon as she pulled away, I rushed to Philip. What was in the bag? He handed it to me wordlessly. Inside was a baby onesie. Printed across the front were the words, Grandma's favorite, and a note. When you have kids, I'll be part of their lives, whether you like it or not. I felt sick. Philip did his best to move on that night. He smiled. He thanked guests. But I could see it, the chill in his eyes, the fear of what she might try next. Later, once the guests had gone, the four of us sat in the living room, trying to process. We could try for a restraining order, Larry suggested. On what grounds? Philip said. She hasn't technically threatened us. That onesie felt pretty threatening to me, Amber said quietly. She'd been quiet all night. I reached for her hand. We won't let her anywhere near your children. I promise. Philip ran his hands through his hair. I thought this was over. I really thought she understood. People like Mildred don't change, I said. They just wait for a new opportunity. We didn't come to any big decisions that night, but we agreed to stay alert. The next morning, Philip installed security cameras around the house. Weeks passed. No contact. The wedding plans moved forward. Amber found a stunning dress. The venue was booked. It finally felt like life was returning to normal. Until I got a call. A number I didn't recognize. Something told me not to answer, but I did. Hello? Is this Margaret? Yes. Who's this? My name is Janice. I'm Richard's partner. Mildred's ex-husband. Every nerve in my body went tense. How did you get this number? From Richard. He thought you should know. Mildred's been arrested. I sat down hard. Arrested? For what? Credit card fraud. She stole Richard's card info, ran up thousands in charges. But that wasn't why she was calling. There's more, Janice said. When the police searched her apartment, they found a notebook. My heart sank. It had notes about Philip, plans, ways to get money out of him, pages of information, his home address, details about his business, even Amber's work schedule. Her voice dropped. It was disturbing. My blood ran cold. Have you told the police everything? About her past with Philip? I asked Janice. Yes, she said. Richard's talking to them right now. Between the credit card fraud and the contents of that notebook, they're pushing for jail time. I thanked her for the call, hung up, and immediately dialed Philip. He and Amber came over within the hour. We sat them down and told them everything Janice had said. Amber's voice was barely a whisper. So, she's been watching us this whole time? Philip pulled her close. It's over now. She can't reach us anymore. But what we later learned chilled me even more. Mildred had planned to approach Amber, alone, to convince her to talk sense into Philip, to make him support his struggling mother. There were notes about using potential grandchildren as leverage. It was cold, precise, and terrifying. In the end, Mildred was sentenced to 18 months in prison for credit card fraud. The notebook helped sway the court, even if it wasn't enough to bring a separate charge. But it showed intent, and that was enough. The day of her sentencing, Philip, Larry, and I sat silently in the courtroom. Mildred never once looked our way, never acknowledged us. It was like we were strangers to her. As the bailiff led her away, I felt conflicted, a strange mix of emotions. Grief for the daughter I'd lost long ago, relief that, for now, she couldn't hurt us again, and overwhelming gratitude for the son who never wavered. The wedding happened that spring, and it was perfect. Amber was radiant. Philip couldn't stop smiling. They chose a quiet ceremony in a blooming garden, surrounded by people who loved them for all the right reasons. During the reception, Philip pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, placing a small box in my hands. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. A single charm hung from it, a small heart. "What's this for?" I asked, my voice cracking. He smiled. "For being my real mom. For loving me when she couldn't. Or wouldn't." I hugged him tight. There were no words big enough for that moment. Later that evening, as Larry and I slow danced under the lights, I glanced across the room. Philip and Amber were laughing together. Heads leaned close, already lost in the life they were building. "We did good with him," Larry whispered. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Yes," I said quietly. "We really did." Mildred was released after serving 14 months. She never reached out again. According to Richard, who heard through a mutual acquaintance, she moved to Florida and started over, again. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about what she lost. Not just the money she never got, but the chance to know her son, the opportunity to stand at his wedding, to hold her grandchildren, to be part of something good, something real. But we made our choice too. And 2 years after the wedding, Philip called us from the hospital, his voice thick with emotion. "They're perfect, Mom," he said. "Absolutely perfect." Amber had given birth to twins, a boy and a girl. When we arrived at the hospital, Philip placed a sleeping newborn into my arms. "Meet your granddaughter, Margaret," he whispered. I looked down at her peaceful little face and felt something bloom in my chest. A quiet, pure joy. This was what family should be. Not manipulation, not guilt, not fear or obligation, just love. Freely given and deeply received. As for Mildred, she made her choices, and we made ours.